Hello and greetings from Iceland, but today I'm going to cover the earthquakes up north. But as I mentioned just a while ago, it would not surprise me if we would see yet another earthquake swarm there soon. And then it all started this morning, or with a magnitude 4 earthquake at 14 kilometers depth. So that meant only one thing. I had this great excuse to get out of the house and get one of those famous North Icelandic hot dogs, deep fried with cheese and fries, and hit the road. So I'm on my way from Akureyri now to get myself some footage from the earthquake epicenter, but I needed also some clips for other projects, so I could use today's journey very well. And we are heading north all the way to the mouth of Iceland's deepest fjord. But you can notice that we are not all the way into the green color palette yet due to cold spring, but it's coming and every day counts now. So let's take a look at the map. Here is Eyjafjörður and our destination is here, and this is the road we are driving. The earthquakes take place here or between the island Grímsey and the mainland, and it's a part of the Tjörnes fracture zone that's bothering us now. But it has enough tension now for an earthquake up to magnitude 7, so that's a good enough reason to cover this now. But please do not misunderstand me. There is nothing telling us that we are in for the big one now. I do, however, almost always get questions in the comment section when we get earthquakes larger than magnitude 3, 4. So I decided to explain the situation and make this into a sightseeing tour as well. And as a matter of fact, I was just yesterday working on the full story about this region, since I shot some of the footage I needed for that video only last Saturday. But that script still needs some work, since it's a lot of old stories in it that I need to include since we lack science data, but it's gonna be online very soon. And this is a region that we need to be concerned about, since it's where some of the largest earthquakes in Iceland occur. But luckily though, they don't get larger than magnitude 7, and the last large one occurred in the town we are driving through right now, or in 1934. It was somewhere around magnitude 6.2, 6.4, and the epicenter was between this town, Dalvík, and the island out there called Hrísey. And I'm linking to a recent video of mine covering this town, but it covers the earthquake pretty well. And it's a part of my town visit series. And since you have my expert knowledge around today, you will get better hot dogs in Akureyri. But we move up now, up on this mountain that used to be a hard obstacle until we got road tunnels through the worst part. I do actually have a video online about the tunnels, but the purpose of this trip was also to remake my old tunnel videos with drone footage around and the voiceover I didn't do until my volcano coverage took off. So when things move slowly in the volcano department, I have plenty of other stuff to edit. But we are getting to our destination now, or to this car park by the tunnel entrance from where we have this wonderful view. It's also a great place to enjoy the midnight sun, but the elevation is around 120 meters. And during beautiful days like now, we can see the island Grímsey out there, or this rock that's 55 kilometers away from us. And a little over 50 people live there, with millions of puffins and other seabirds. And the Arctic Circle runs through that little island, but it's a 3-hour trip to there with the ferry from Dalvík. And it's even possible to fly over there from Akureyri. And midst between our location and the island is where the earthquakes are now. This is nothing new, and 2 years ago I covered this very strong earthquake swarm that we could feel very well in Akureyri. We were of course worried for a while that it might trigger the big one, but it turned out that it was the north-south fault that was moving that time, and you could see how the earthquakes moved to the north by the fault, little by little, day by day. And this earthquake swarm is starting at the same place, and we still can't see if it's gonna fade out or trigger something else. Most likely this will fade out, but Grímsey isn't a nice place to be located at when the worst goes on, and the island shakes every hour. But we do get such episodes every now and then here by the plate boundaries. But this is all coming from the so-called Tjörnes fracture zone. and it's good for us on the mainland that this takes place offshore, but it is not so all the time. So back to the map. This is where the earthquakes are now, and 2 years ago it was this fault that was moving, but that's not what worries us. Here we have the so-called Húsavík-Flatey fault, and that could most likely be the worst case scenario. So let's place a drone here and look along the fault as it runs through a town called Húsavík by a bay called Skjálfandaflói or Shaking Bay. And the fault runs through this lake and the town and all the way out there to Flatey Island that we see here. And it is pretty obvious in the landscape, but this was shot for my upcoming video last Saturday. So I'm not going to analyze this photo now, but we can also see the mountains of the so-called Flateyjarskagi Peninsula from the east now. But let's take off from the car park we just drove to, and here we can see the west side. And you can just imagine the landslides we will get after a large earthquake around here. But this peninsula has been abandoned for decades now, and the island Flatey, that means flat island, is to the north of it, so we don't see it from here. But I shot this 2 years ago from the peninsula with my zoom lens, and I did also 3 videos from a camera in front of my car where I covered all 3 roads in and around this peninsula that used to be the home of many of my ancestors. And I can't describe the landscape there as a picture perfect, but it's interesting, and this place has something to it that's hard to describe. But it's only possible to drive there after late June and until September. But it's also a popular hiking region. But I want you to notice now this little rock out there with the lighthouse by the mouth of the fjord. And there we have a mystery for the geology nerds. But this fjord is called Eyjafjörður, or Fjord of Islands, not island. But it's only one island in the fjord, and that's the island Hrísey I just mentioned. So were my forefathers drunk when I named the fjord? Because this skerry out there is really not an island as we categorize them. And furthermore, as you look at the ancient maps, this skerry is widely mentioned there. And for what reason may one ask? Of course, those old maps were of poor quality when it comes to accuracy, but it's just very strange how this skerry turned out to be categorized as an island back then, or during the 16th century. And I'm mentioning this because a few years back I did restore many old Icelandic maps for printing, and they are still available in my print-on-demand store. And you can check the links for that. But there have been some speculations around here, or were there indeed 2 islands in the fjord when it was named after the settlement? And is this little skerry just a part of an island that sank? But we don't have any historical data to support that, however. And to the best of my knowledge, this area hasn't been studied with that in mind. And I do have another mystery to mention now, or what might perhaps be the largest landslide in Iceland. And now I'm going to use some footage since last autumn and leave links to the full video about this. But this must have been a natural disaster of huge scale back then. And as I was showing my video to local people, most of them had no clue about this landslide. Even people who have often been driving directly over it. And as I started to search for information, the only science report I found was made by a student in natural science, and the landslide was estimated to be 7,000 years old in that paper. But I did also take up an old article where a geologist was mentioning this, and I could read between the lines that he had some doubts about this piece of paper. And then we have rock-solid facts like satellite data that shows that a part of the landslide is still moving. And that's from a report that covers the landslide risk from the huge earthquake that we expect to take place on the Tjörnes fracture zone. Another geologist mentioned that there is a fault running through the mountain, but I can't find it in any geology maps. And might this be it? Or what made this mountain split apart and cause this major event? But those are just my own speculations about the landscape around. After all, my interest in photography comes from this. And this was shot of the landslide today across the fjord and a bit further north we have another one, but this is Iceland indeed, always something new. But back to the car park and up with the drone again, and let's have a look around. I will be covering the old road there in a separate video soon, but it's usable for hiking, and my plan is to fly along the complete road, but I need good wind conditions, and I will have to do one flight from here to the northernmost part and move over to Ólafsfjörður to here and shoot the rest of the road from there. And this is how Ólafsfjörður looks during summer, but I do have a winter video about this town. But back to basics, many detours today. The earthquakes continue as I'm doing this voiceover. It seems now that this might fade out soon, but we can look at this video as a kind of tip, as so many of you are watching the live seismometer feed here in Iceland. And as usual, it's my job to bring you closer. And this was a short version. And before I end this today, I want to mention that I have covered a whole lot of towns around here in my town series. I do, however, want to point out that many of those town visit episodes include related information, like my video about Dalvík that covers the 1934 earthquake. But it's nothing I can say about the situation in Grindavík just now. We are just waiting, and I don't find a good reason to make a video about that situation just now. So I'm gonna hold on a bit with that. But believe me, I have plenty of other stuff coming up. But when the green colors pop out, I'm not staying in. It's gonna be a busy summer, and it's only gonna be joy to show you around my home country, the volcano island, Iceland.